Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode from the most beautiful nerd that you've ever seen in your entire life. I hope it's me, but it could be somebody else. Spot of Nerd here. And we have got quite the interesting review here that we're going to do. Obviously, it's going to be Furiosa. I'm going to hold you the fucking Harry Potter shit just for the time being. Trust me, I'm pretty fucking sure we'll get to it. This is a very, I want to say this was a good film. And trust me, the reviews from everybody else are saying it's mind-blowing, it's one of the greatest things since sliced fucking bread. But it's not. And I'm going to explain why. I'm not going to say it's a bad film, but I'm not going to say it's a good film. I think the most important thing to get you hopefully interested in continuing to watch this review, this is not a Mad Max film. If anything, this isn't a Furiosa film. This is a World of Warcraft meets Minecraft meets fucking Sims type movie. And quite frankly, yes, I was optimistic about it, but ultimately, after now seeing it, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga is definitely not anywhere near what, quite frankly, I feel the Mad Max genre is. Of course, the usual suspects. If you would be ever so kind, I would love you forever through the screen. If you haven't already, if you could go ahead, subscribe right down below. Give me the thumbs up, comments, let me know your thoughts. If you've seen the movie yet, if you haven't, go watch it, come back. Which leads into the spoiler warning. I'm probably going to spoil this film. Not as much as you think, but at the same time, there will be spoilers, so I'm giving you this warning right here, right now. You've had your chance. I would encourage you to keep watching me, because of look at how fucking amazing this is. But ultimately, I understand if you want to go and watch the film first and then come back and watch this. But let's get down to it, because ultimately, Furiosa, we're just gonna call this Furiosa. I don't need to do the whole fucking long ass thingamabob. This movie has nothing to do with Furiosa other than having her as a secondary character. You know, let me give you the quick synopsis. Obviously, this is if anything, this is a fucking prequel to the Tom Hardy reboot that was Mad Max. And I swear, God, hand to God, I genuinely believe that Mad Max film, the one with Tom Hardy, is one of the greatest films ever made. I swear to you, easily my top 10, if not top 5, best, most favorite films of all time. So when this came out, when there was rumors about this, when we got a trailer, when we got news, blah, 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 yeah, I was excited. I really was optimistic, regardless of today's agendas and today's politics, which surprisingly, holy shitballs, if there was a giant positive I can give this film, they completely, at least I didn't really notice it, they stay away from the wokeness, they stay away from the politics, and they just make a fucking film. Holy shit. Wow. I think where this really does ultimately miss is the story, because there isn't one. You know, you have to have had to see... words come together. I would recommend, if you haven't already, you need to see Mad Max Fury Road with Tom Hardy to really understand this film. Albeit this is a prequel film, and let's be honest, if you probably started here, you go and watch the Tom Hardy Mad Max, this movie will probably make a lot more sense. It really is ultimately just continuing the story from what we already know, even though it's a prequel. So it starts off, Furiosa is a kid, she's with this group of people that has food and water, blah blah blah. It's the apocalypse, the Marauder people come and get her, and they steal her, and, you know, it just goes from there. She grows up as a kid, and then flips to adulthood. There's so many missing pieces to, you know, first she's a slave, Then she's another slave and a prisoner. Then she's a sex slave turned engineer, turned driver, turned bodyguard, turned killer, turned driver again. And then there's a love story in the mix, which is just fucking weird. I think, like I say, that is where the biggest miss for this movie is because it's all over the fucking place. It really, really is. But if you wanted to get down to the nitty gritty of what this film is all about, again, you have to look at Mad Max Tom Hardy. I'm just going to call it that just so you know what I'm referencing to. So you have the dude, the evil skull-looking mask guy who's in charge of the water in his area. And then you have Gas Town, and then you have Bullet Town. Now, Chris Hemsworth obviously is the bad guy, even though pretty much everybody is a bad guy except Furiosa and her love interest, which we'll get to. That's the basis of this film. They're just going between one city and the next to see who can overtake it. Like, Chris Hemsworth originally kidnaps Furiosa as a child, says it's her daughter, his daughter rather, sorry, and then loses it to Skull Guy, breathing apparatus Skull Guy, because he wanted her as a prize or something. And then throughout the film, there's just, everybody has a different story. You have Gastown's story, you have Bullet Town's story, you have the Marauder story. You have these other Marauder story. You have the children, the ones that dress up in all white and then like spray silver on them. You have that story. But in between, you just have the most random sequences of action and excitement and big, big, bang, boom, boom. You still don't have a fucking clue what the fucking purpose of this fucking film is. So ultimately, that's where I have a hard time telling you that this is a good film, because it's not. I don't know what the purpose of this film is, other than to continue the story that was Mad Max Tom Hardy version. Sure, there's some throwbacks. If anything, the majority of this film is throwbacks to Tom Hardy's Mad Max. Yes, Furiosa plays a big part in the film. The actress, her name is Taylor something or other. She's been in a lot of stuff. She is a good actress. I'm not the biggest fan of hers. I'm not saying she's bad. I just, she's just who she is. I don't really understand why she got this role. I think Charlize Theron in Tom Hardy's Mad Max was superior. But lo and behold, here you go. George Miller directed. He's directed every other Mad Max film. And I'm going to keep going back to this. You know me. You know Spot of Nerd. I'm a broken record. There are so many missed opportunities in this film. I have to get it out, and where I'm going to go with this, but I just have to get it out. For the love of God, how is it Mad Max Tom Hardy had superior cinematography and CGI than this film? And I knew it. I fucking knew it. The CGI in this film is trash. It's absolute garbage. So that's another reason why I cannot tell you this is a good film. I was worried about it when we first got those trailers. I'm like, this looks like one giant blue screen fuck. And lo and behold, it is. It's so heartbreaking, because that's where I have such a passion. I have such an attachment to the Tom Hardy Mad Max, even the Mel Gibson Mad Max. They are works of art. But how is it you have CGI that was better 10 years ago than what you have today? Like, the majority of these scenes, especially the fight sequences, the cars and the action and the explosions and the bodies and all this stuff, it's all computer animated, and it's so obvious. And that's what ultimately does ruin this film. It really, really... And you can tell where I'm like, because I wanted to love this film. I wanted this film to knock it out of the park. I really, really did. But ultimately, you just have a story that goes nowhere. You have multiple characters that you're trying to build a story from. And I think, like I've been saying, there's so many ties back to the Tom Hardy Mad Max. They're focusing, okay, well, you have skeleton breathing apparatus guy. We need to make sure people know who he is. And then he has his minions, the bullet guy who had like the headdress full of bullets. So we need to make sure you understand who he is. And then you have Chris Hemsworth. He's also a baddie. So we need to make sure you understand him. But we need to portray him as like super evil and nasty and stuff like that. And at the same time, there's territories. We got to make sure that Chris Hemsworth is trying to take over all these territories, even though he doesn't, because in the Mad Max Tom Hardy film, we understand that breathing apparatus skull guy ultimately takes over everything. And then you have the trucks, and then the big rigs, and then the guys in the... It's just so fucking much. And here's where I will say as well, it misses the mark on so many levels. If you go back to literally one of my most recent episodes, I reviewed the movie If. This movie has so many drawn out sequences that do not need to be drawn out sequences. It's so bad that even, I swear to you people, big spoiler here, from the time that you see Furiosa as a child to the time you see her as an adult, where the actress Taylor takes over, you're talking an hour, probably hour 20 minutes before we even get to her being an adult. And then it takes another fucking hour to get to the final sequence where she wants her revenge on Chris Hemsworth, because Chris Hemsworth is just causing mayhem around all the territories, as if you're really good at Warcraft and you're just able to take over town after town. It's just a mind fuck. And it's so like, there's, you know how, if you know me, you know me. There's so much up here that I want to but at the same time, I also don't want to overdo it, because ultimately, hopefully, why you come to my channel is to just get a perspective of, should I go see this or should I not? But also, is this going to be a good review for me to check out? To make sure, is everybody else just full of shit, or is it really just another film to go see potentially in theaters, or should I wait for it to come to streaming? Visually, like I said, fuck it. If you need to go see a movie, go for it. If you can wait, I would honestly say wait. Probably your TV at home is going to be just fine. One last piece too, revolving around the story, because like I said, there's so many drawn out sequences. One of the worst tragedies, and I mean tragedies, one of the best things that Tom Hardy's Mad Max had was the sequences, was the action sequences. They legitimately built those cars. They legitimately crashed those cars. There was hardly any CGI in that Mad Max film. Trust me, go and watch. There's a lot of YouTube, like behind the scenes. There's a lot of articles you can read. But ultimately, Tom Hardy's Mad Max, 80% of it was real. This film, 90% of it is probably blue screen. And it's so sad because they waited so long. By the time we get to the point where Furiosa is Furiosa with the chopped arm and the bald head and the black makeup stuff and looking like a real badass, there's supposedly this 40-day war. Chris Hemsworth is trying to take over all the territories. Everybody else knows about it. So they talk about this big, huge war that goes on between the territories, and you don't see any of it. So like I've said in the beginning of this review, there are sequences in between the other convoluted crap that makes no fucking sense that are completely pointless. And i.e., what I mean is, it could be a simple case of the big rig is dropping off gas or food to one village. They'll spend 30 minutes on a sequence, an action sequence, of just them trying to get there. But yet, they will only discuss this most major war that happened for 40 days between all the territories, and they'll only just tell you about it. They won't show you. The only thing they will show you is the aftermath. They'll show you bodies and the graphic of, there's just mounds of bodies everywhere. And these are all CGI bodies. They're not even real prosthetics. They're not real. It's fucking CGI dead people. How do you fuck dead people up? My God, people, like how? Come on, George, how do you fuck this up? You were supposed to knock this out of the park and you failed so bad. But, let alone, with all that aside, then you have a love story. Let's not forget the love story. So, if you know Mad Max Tom Hardy, you know the story, kind of what the whole apocalyptic world that they're in. You have these drivers. They drive the big rigs back and forth, so they collect the gas, they drop the food, and yada, yada, yada. So there's this Tom Hardy, Mel Gibson-esque guy that we get introduced to that, of course, turns into the love interest of Furiosa. And the two of them are going to run off into the distance together, or I should say, drive off, pun intended, drive off into the distance together, so that they can go back to Furiosa's home where there's food and water and da-da-da-da-da. But no, Chris Hemsworth won't have that. And it's cringe. It's cringe because Obviously, spoiler, Chris Hemsworth catches up to them, basically tortures them to death, but they're obviously kissing each other, and it's, where the fuck did this come from? You're literally, her arm is damn near soldered off. They're both bleeding to death, but let's make out with each other, because that's what we do. And then again, he fucking dies, and that's where she turns into the Furiosa that we all know and actually love, that Charlize Theron played in Mad Max Tom Hardy. Ugh. A lot of verbal diarrhea is coming out on this review. I just want to make sure that I get this out in relation to why I cannot say this is a good film. I wanted this to be a good film. I really, really was like, please don't let this be a fucked up film or just bad or woke or yada, yada, yada. But there's just that little piece of me, and this is where I guess the optimism or the change of negativity to positivity comes in. It was a movie. It was a movie to just kind of watch. It was very like, I wasn't rolling my eyes, politics or wokeness or agendas, blah, blah, blah. But I just wasn't like, oh my god, this is incredible. This is the most best thing I've ever seen. This was just like watching, I don't know, I can't, you know where you just can't put the words to it, but you know you can't put a positive take to it. That's what makes it so hard, because I love the Mad Max series. I truly, truly believe the Tom Hardy Mad Max is one of the best films ever made. But this, they tried so hard to kind of pull you in from the past, the Tom Hardy version. They tried so hard to leave Easter eggs. They tried so hard to give you different action sequences. Like in this one, instead of the crazy, they'll attach bodies, or they call them blood banks, to the cars. There's people that just pop up in parachutes and shit like that. And they're trying to create something different, but it's not. Or even the big rig. You look at the trailer. This big rig is all fancy, shiny, chrome looking, and ultimately, it's like, it doesn't hold up to the badass that was Mad Max Tom Hardy's version Big Rig. So I'll give them the credit that whenever there was something real, it did look phenomenal. You know, they're trying to kind of give you more of what the Tom Hardy Mad Max was in relation to the aesthetics, you know, if they were actually on a real set. But it just, the biggest fail among everything else I've said, and if this is a broken record, I do apologize, but the biggest miss is this story is so convoluted. It is in so many different places that it actually implodes on it. That's the best way I can describe it. It actually implodes on itself, and it takes away the idea that this movie should have been about Furiosa. This movie, I would, if you were to ask me honestly, if you were to watch this film as a complete nobody who knew nothing about this film, don't even tell them the title of the film. I can promise you they're gonna go, that has this film had nothing to do with her. Sure, she was a side character, but this doesn't have anything to do with her. If anything, Chris Hemsworth has far more screen time than Furiosa does. The dude that she falls in love with, borderline, has far more character development than Furiosa does. She says a maximum, Furiosa herself, regardless as a kid or as an adult, says a maximum of maybe 50 words for 2.5 hours, which, by the way, like I said, the stretching out of some of these scenes, this does not need to be a 2.5 hour film, for the love of God. We're going to talk about this more later, but I do want to talk about how films today are trying so hard to stretch these films out to 2.5, 3 hour films that could easily be an hour and a half. I promise you, whoever's watching, directors, studios, as an audience member, we don't need longevity. We need quality, and we need integrity, and we need cohesion between what you gave us before and what you have now. Regardless of prequel, sequel, reboot, you've got to give us the foundation of what you're trying to get across in your story, whether through characters, story, place, space, sci-fi, real, Earth, apocalypse, whatever it might be. You're missing every little box I've just mentioned, because you're trying to give us a nostalgia bait. You're trying to give us something that, quite frankly, doesn't make sense. And it should. It ultimately should, but it doesn't. So we will simply leave it at that. Oh yeah, one more thing and then I'll leave it at that. They have this like chapter thing in the film, like chapter 1, accountability, chapter 2, alonement, and it's, what the fuck is it? It's like if you've ever seen Dunkirk, with Christopher Nolan directing fucking one of the most amazing films, but it says like number 1, Mold, number 2, Air. The fuck does this have to do with a Mad Max film? It's fucking pointless. Why? Why? Okay, I promise I'll shut up. I've said enough. I hope you get the gist. If you've gotten this far, my huge thanks. I seriously thank you so much for getting this far. If you love what you see, like I say, please comment, like, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. I super appreciate all the love and support. If this made no sense whatsoever, I get it. I really fucking get it, because I don't even know what the fuck this is all about too. So, but ultimately, Spot Nerd, I would give this a direct 1 cup of tea out of 4 from yours truly, Spot Nerd. That is it. This does not go beyond 1 cup of tea, because it's just not a fucking good film. It's not a good film. It's not a bad film. It's worth seeing. Sure, if you've seen Mad Max, I would watch that first. Tom Hardy Mad Max. But no, it's not a good film. So with all of that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys next time. Later, y'all. You think I'm gonna do it, don't you? You think I'm gonna do it? Furiosa! I've been working on that shit all fucking day. Let's be real though, Hermione did it best. Come on, check it out.
Stop. You're going to take someone's eye out. Besides, you're saying it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
You do it then if you're so clever.
Go on.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa.
See here, everyone. Miss Granger's done it.
Leviosa. Oh, it's Levio. No, not Fear. I guess Fury Levio. No, fucking just. I'm just gonna stop, okay?